We have a list of bills. I actually have one extra bill to put on the end of our list. So let me drop it into chat here for anybody who would like to look it up. A late addition to our to the hearings list. But anyway, we can get started with the very first bill on our list. There's Judge Block. We can get started with the very first bill on our list, which is House Bill 4098, which is fine because that one may take the most time to talk about. Excuse me. House Bill 4098 is our bill. It's the bill that Adpc asked to have introduced. And as everybody will remember, because we've talked about this bill before, it is the bill that puts items from Goal 1 into statute. And those items have to do with our partner state agencies meeting periodically with us and providing information on how they are making progress on the items assigned to them in the strategic plan. And then Adpc producing an annual report showing how we're making progress on the overall strategic plan. Representative Sanchez said that she would introduce this as her personal bill, and she did. It is now House Bill 4098. And I know Dr. Richardson is testifying on it tomorrow, and there's a hearing tomorrow morning in the Behavioral Health Care Committee. Dr. Richardson is testifying, and Nate, thank you for letting me know. Nate is also testifying on it. I have sent the link to each one of you to register to testify, so I will pester you both to make sure you have actually clicked the link and done the necessary steps to get yourselves registered to testify, and I'll keep pestering you after the meeting to make sure that happens.
Okay, well, let me just tell you, I'm all set, so you don't have to bother.
Are you all set, Nate?
I am not all set for verbal testimony, although I did submit the written testimony. Do you want me to test verbally?
Not if you don't want to. If you just want to submit written testimony, as long as you've done that, then I no pestering needs to be taken.
Okay, awesome. My day tomorrow is just slammed, so
no worries. All right.
Okay.
So everybody's done doing whatever they need to do to testify. Perfect. I will say that there has been a development with our bill, because no matter how many sessions we try to do this very non-controversial bill, there is always a development with it. And this session is no exception. And the development is that DOJ is wanting to add an amendment to House Bill 4056, and that amendment would include their enabling legislation for the Johnson & Johnson opioid settlement. The relating to clause on our bill is broad enough that it would work for them to do that. So we have been in some discussions with Department of Justice. I think it is fair to say they started off not so well, but they have gone better in subsequent discussions. And in fact, Dr. Richardson had a subsequent discussion with the governor's office that went well. So while we may not have started off very well, I think we are in a much better place with DOJ's amendment. Very, very briefly, DOJ's amendment would set up another board to determine where the $20 million that we'd be going to the state from the opioid settlement, to determine where those dollars would go. The board would be housed at OHA. And while this was a point, I think, for Adpc that we weren't super happy to hear, that it would be yet another board and be housed at OHA, Adpc does have a seat at the table. And one of the guiding documents that this board would use in determining where the dollars go would be Adpc's strategic plan. So again, I think we're in a much better place with DOJ over their amendment than we were when we started this. So in tomorrow morning's hearing, for anybody who would like to tune in and listen, you will hear Dr. Richardson talk about our portion of House Bill 4098. And then you will hear DOJ talk about their amendment to this bill. And yeah, it will, at first I thought it may be a hearing with high drama, and now I think everybody's on the same page and we're all moving together. And now, what?
Don't, now you just jinxed it.
So perhaps there will be high drama, who knows? But I think in sum, we're in a much better place than we were. And now everybody knows our bill is actually being used for two distinct purposes, but it should move forward. And oh, I should also say Representative Sanchez has told us with no hold bar that if anything were to happen to the DOJ portion of the bill, she will make sure that the ADPC portion continues to move forward. So I think that lessened our anxiety a little bit. All right, Tony, you have a question.
Sure, yeah. So I see Nate's providing public testimony, and I'm just wondering if there was a strategy behind that, and if other commissioners were planning on doing it, or stakeholders, or just how that came to be.
Yeah, I think Nate's doing it wearing his other hat, and he just wanted to make sure I knew about it so that it wouldn't be surprising. And I was like, what?
There's always a method to my madness, Tony. So I do serve on the OACCD exec panel, and so I use that platform to help with pushing this through and supporting it. So that was the strategy, and I'm doing it as a director or the vice chair or whatever for OACCD, not as a commissioner for ADPC.
And Tony, to answer your question in more detail, Nate also sent me his testimony just to make sure it didn't say anything contrary. It wasn't that it helped support ADPC, because he had said he definitely didn't want to say anything that wasn't supporting ADPC. So I took a look at it and told him, I'll try and help you get signed up to testify. And that was it.
Jill, this is Eric Block. I had a couple of questions. So can I ask, who's the person with whom you're dealing at Department of Justice?
It's their legislative director, Kimberly McCulloch.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So did the negotiations involve sort of the issue of whether their amendment should be attached to our bill only, or was there also a discussion about sort of the wisdom of the content of their bill?
Both.
Both. Yeah. I mean, I guess, I frankly am, just horrified at the prospect of yet another pot of money getting bogged down in the OHA bureaucracy. And I'm sure I'm not alone in that to some extent, or to a large extent. I certainly would have preferred, the ADPC be more directly in charge of that, or frankly, just about anybody else. But, I don't know whether there's any opportunity to weigh in on that.
Yeah, that ship's come and gone. So, the cities and counties were pretty adamant in what they were wanting, and basically we're up against a time crunch where if they didn't reach resolution, they were going to lose a substantial amount of money.
And what they wanted was OHA to be the distributor of the funds. How does that get them any money?
No, that wasn't the issue that they wanted OHA, what they wanted was an independent board, and OHA was just the administrative house, if you
Right.
will, for
But
the holdings.
yeah, but I mean, look at the money that was set aside, you know, tens of millions of dollars for mentors that, you know, that OHA has been basically, you know, done nothing on. So that's my concern. This money is being allocated and it's just sitting there and it's not helping a damn person who is desperately in need of help because it's all caught up. We're funneling everything through this very narrow portal of OHA, and they're clearly overwhelmed. Why do we keep doing the same thing over and over again?
Excellent question.
Yeah, great question. I think for us, it was getting the ADPC involved in a central role of the process of the allocation, getting the executive director on the committee, and having the ADPC plan as referenced as a point of accountability for how the money got spent.
Yes, I think that's all great, and I'm not, you know, and I know that was probably in and of itself a heavy enough lift. I mean, does the fact that Dr. Richardson, you're going to be a member of that board, does that suggest that somehow the board is in a fairly advanced stage of being formed, or is it just there's a seat reserved for you, but as to everyone else and everything else, we're basically starting from scratch?
No, I think we've been able to negotiate that the governor will appoint me to actually be a co-facilitator representing the state. And then there'll be a county and city representative that those representatives will vote for that person to be chair. And there's a pretty restrictive how the money can be utilized.
Mm-hmm.
That was in the original settlement.
Right.
And I think because I think we'll be able to get this thing formed quicker because it won't depend on OHA staffing it and sort of running it. They'll be the banker, if you will.
Okay. So we don't have to put together some far-flung sort of uber representative committee and have them storm and norm and do all that kind of stuff. It sounds like it's a more circumscribed board and with the goal of getting money out the door a lot quicker.
The counties and the cities are very motivated to get their money.
Okay. All right. Wow.
Yes, especially after the last board that was created took their money from them, their marijuana tax money. So they're very opposed to Measure 110 getting any of it, and they want most of it, which they got, which is a 55% cut of the funding that they can use at their discretion within the provision of the agreement and what the money can be used for. And then the rest of the money is going to go to another committee that's going to appropriate grants. And that was, in my opinion, I was involved in the negotiations and resolution. That was the best thing that could have came out of it. The absolute worst thing is that everybody fought and we lost out on a bunch of money. So it's another pot of money for Dr. Richardson to chase around and try to figure out what people are doing with it.
At this point, I'd like them.
That's what it is. Yeah.
At this point, I'd like them to just do something with it, you know, as opposed to just have it sit there. So, okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for letting me be cranky.
But your point is still well taken, and I don't think anybody really wanted it to go down this way. But I think we've been able to get the best of a not so great situation. I don't think the condition that Oregon is in is due to the fact that we don't have this board.
No.
or
No.
250 other boards and commissions?
Well, I mean, and this kind of tees up this question or this issue. So I'm just going to put it out there. I mean, to the extent that the legislature, is going to take some of this $2 billion and spend it on in this area that we're all concerned about. I mean, is OHA just going to sit there and say, yeah, give us the money, give us the money, give us the money, recognizing that, that they're already, months, if not years behind in moving forward and giving effect to money they got last session. I mean, is there any opportunity for us to step forward with some alternative strategy for how to distribute or oversee or have a significant role in whatever Jill's going to tell us might be coming down the pike by way of more dollars to see if we can get Oregon out of last place or first place, and depending upon which thing you're looking at.
It certainly is my hope, Judge. We will see who gets appointed and, what that process is going to look like.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't mean to bog down the presentation. So, Jill, do you want to move on? But I may want to just come back to this as a concept a little bit later on if we have time.
Sure. And Judge Black, you are raising questions that were questions we raised. Or I mean,
yes,
right? Like you're saying this questions that were asked. So I it's good to know that we're all raising the same questions. But yes, we can come back to 4098 and talk about it in more depth if we want to later.
Well, it's just this. I view the Adpc as being, sort of in touch with reality. We all have, very close contacts with the boots on the ground in this area, and we know the need. We know the profound need. And it's just incredibly frustrating that at long last, when we're seeing a little bit of action being taken, a little bit of money being flowing, it's not really flowing because a lot of it is just bogged down in OHA. And I know it's a very, very difficult place for us to be in because of the relationship, between OHA and Adpc, but somebody at some point has to basically say, when it comes to OHA's ability to move as quickly as needs to happen with respect to getting this money out there for the people who are desperately in need of it and the services it will buy, the emperor has no clothes. It's not happening. And and is there a role for us to play in that conversation without it having, just horrible, deadly blowback on, on the commission's ability to, to operate and exist? That's the issue.
Yes, I think we all agree. Yes.
Okay.
All right. Knowing that we can come back to House Bill 4098, why don't we move to our next bill? And our next bill is House Bill 4004. So House Bill 4004, I think I can sum it pretty quickly by saying House Bill 4004 was something that actually providers themselves had asked for. And one of the things that a lot of the behavioral health providers had said was there was some assistance flowing to them for recruitment and retention bonuses, but what they would like is actually a much more flexible pot of money to be able to help them support staff in whatever way their staff needed support. And House Bill 4004 is the result of that request. So it is setting up a pot of money for behavioral health providers to use for supporting their staff that has some more flexibility than the previous recruitment and retention bonuses that had been offered by OHA. That bill also has a hearing in Behavioral Health Care Committee tomorrow morning. So for anybody who would like to tune in to see our bill, one of the bills that's coming up prior to our bill is this one, House Bill 4004. I recognize we're a state agency and we have limited ability to support or oppose bills, but I feel on this one, we can say we support it. It's a, I don't want to say it's a simple bill, it's a simple concept, but does anybody have any questions about this bill?
Yeah, Joe, this is Tony. Would it have to be a licensed treatment provider to receive funding?
You know, Tony, you're asking a question that goes down into a little more detail. Let me quickly look at the bill and see what it says, and if not, we can go offline.
It's under section 1, capital A. It does say that they do have to have certified certification through Oregon Health Authority to provide behavioral health care. And then there's a list of other requirements there that fall within it, but it does look like they have to be certified. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nate.
All right. So once again, that bill has a hearing tomorrow morning in behavioral health care. The next bill on our list is House Bill 4016. I put this on our list because it is.
So going back, Jill, on that, if I may.
Yes.
For this specific bill, this is a concept that we've been talking about for quite some time, and just in terms of getting enough people recruited and retained within behavioral health. And, you know, we also talked about some pay equity too for our addiction counselors and so on and so forth. And so I really appreciate this concept. Can we talk about providing testimony or support on this particular bill from Adpc, or is that something that we want to work behind the scenes?
We're going back to House Bill 4004.
Yeah.
Well, let me talk to the executive director about it, Nate, and see if putting in some testimony on House Bill 4004 is possible.
I'd be happy to work on that language if Director Richardson wants to, and of course Chair Tony. So.
Okay. Yep.
So just to be clear, Nate, are you asking that it come from the Adpc as opposed to any of the various hats that you wear?
Yeah, whatever's going to be most impactful, I'd be more than happy to help.
Okay. All right, so
I can present this to our legislative committee at OACCD as well, because I wasn't aware of this one until Jill had sent it out, because this wasn't on our radar for public safety.
All right, well, Jill and I will caucus and put something together.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right. Any last minute items about House Bill 4004? Okay, we will go on to House Bill 4016. I put this one on our list because OLCC sent me a list of their priority bills, and this was one of their priority bills. And I thought it might be helpful for everybody to know of its existence. So OLCC is asking for the ability to, if I'm using very inarticulate terms here. If there is a glut in the marijuana market, that they can say no to licensees. Right now, they say that they don't have the mechanism to do that, and there is an overabundance of cannabis and cannabis products, and they don't feel like they have the ability to say no to a license even when that happens. So they're asking for a statutory change to allow them to look at market, supply, all those factors. And if there are situations like this where they believe that there is an overabundance, that they can say no to licenses. That's really the amount of detail I have about this bill. It has a hearing this week in the Economic Prosperity and Recovery Committee. I was really just trying to make sure everybody is aware of this bill, so you know that it's happening, and as I said, because it's on OLCC's priority list. Does anybody have any questions about this bill? And if you do, I have to say I'm not incredibly knowledgeable about this bill, but I can find you answers. All right. We will go on to our next bill then, which is House Bill 4081. As a little bit of history, you might remember there was a bill during last session that tried to require prescribers to offer naloxone, and that bill didn't pass. But the same people who were sponsors of that bill came back this session with a revised bill, and that is House Bill 4081. In this bill, the bill would require pharmacists who see that there is a prescription being dispensed for what I believe they're terming higher risk opioid prescriptions, that they must offer naloxone to that person. This bill has a hearing Friday in the House Healthcare Committee, and it's consistent with the strategic plan. So I wanted to make sure that everybody knows of its existence. And Nate, I know you got to go. Thank you so much for joining us for the time you could. So that is, in a very quick summation, that is what House Bill 4081 is about, is trying to make sure that naloxone gets out to people who are receiving what are termed higher risk opioid prescriptions by the pharmacist. Does anybody have any questions about House Bill 4081? The last I heard on House Bill 4081 is that the pharmacists are not pleased by this bill, so I expect there's going to be a lot of pushback this session. I'll definitely be watching the hearing on Friday, and of course can make sure everybody knows what happens to House Bill 4081.
So I have a question, Jill. Are they not
Yeah.
pleased because of the extra work, or because
Yes.
this is going to be a financial hit? They're giving out medication for free.
Yeah, so I heard that the pharmacists, their complaint is that they view it as extra workload, and that for a lot of pharmacies right now, they feel overwhelmed and that they are having trouble hiring staff, and they're running just to keep up with the workload they have right now. And that this bill would add to their workload, and that they're not happy about that. The sponsors of the bill have tried to point out multiple times that what we're talking about is saving lives. So that is the crux of the matter here. But from the pharmacist perspective, I think they feel like this adds one more thing to the pile of things that they have to do, and that they have concerns about that.
Okay, thank you.
And Dr. Richardson, will you be providing any comment on this bill?
I think we are just watching this bill. Jill, were we planning to do anything on this other than to monitor it?
I wasn't planning on doing anything other than monitor it. We didn't submit testimony on the bill in last session that would have had prescribers offering naloxone. But that, of course, I'm just telling you, we didn't do it last session. That doesn't mean that we always have to do the exact same thing we did in previous sessions. So to answer your question, Tony, I wasn't planning on it, but if you think we should, convince me.
I mean, at least, at the very least, it might be proactive of us to just tie it to our strategic plan, where it reduces death, and to at least just give a shout out to the bill sponsors as, hey, thank you. This connects to the strategic plan. This is important to us. Let us know if you need anything, just as a way to promote our plan and give people kudos for good behavior.
That actually makes a lot of sense. We've had some we've had some disappointment with one of the bill sponsors and some of the positions that she's taken. So, but I think we could provide written testimony to this because it is consistent with the state's plan. So we'll do that.
I was going to say, Tony, that was a good point. Dr. Richardson has told legislators in the past that he's really trying to make a commitment when bills come up, if they are conflicting with the strategic plan, that we let them know about them, or if they are consistent with the strategic plan, that we let them know that too. So your point about it's consistent with the strategic plan, I was like, ooh, we've tried to make a commitment to tell legislators when something is consistent. This is consistent with the strategic plan.
Yeah, and I'll be crafting my legislative agenda, my personal and 4D one. Now I'm doing that now. If I send in written testimony as an individual, I just want to double, triple, quadruple check. I can reference that I'm the ADPC chair. If I clarify that, like, hey, I'm writing you on behalf of this, but and put ADPC chair at the bottom.
So didn't we talk about this?
We did. I move fast, and I just want to make sure that I'm not.
When I gave you what you could do, that didn't register. I'm confused by why it's coming up again.
Because I'm just trying to. I have a lot of conversations with a lot of different people, and I just want to double, triple check that I'm doing the right thing. That's it.
Well, I'm sure that Jill will say the same thing that I said, so I guess it'll be all right.
I was going to say yes. Yes, Tony, you are correct. When you are wearing a different hat and not representing ADPC, yes, you can say you are on the.
Reggie, I know what the conversation where you were talking about, and that was about me donating to political campaigns. And if I need it from because I have a private business that I do, a consulting business, and I use that business to donate to candidates. I don't
want you to go to jail.
I know, I don't.
Okay, so.
Well, I've been there before. It's all G. I don't mind a timeout, but you know what I mean. I can handle my own. But like, I just want to make sure that I'm not screwing what we got going on. Okay.
Well,
No. You can reference that.
You never know. I can have my own political pack. You don't know the layers of what I got going on. But I just want to make sure that I'm being ethical in my in my strategy.
Tony, are we ever gonna know that? Is that a tickler for some future reveal? Are we ever gonna know that?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
Anyway, to sum that up, Tony, yes, you are correct. You can reference that you are chair of the ADPC commission, and you will be fine.
Yeah, and I'll put endorsed by Dr. Reginald Richardson at the bottom as well.
That'll make the difference.
Yes.
Always has.
And no connection with Oregon Recovers. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just joking. That's a joke.
All right. So we got some testimony to write on 4081 and 4004. All right, we will move on to our next bill, which is Senate Bill 1512. So Senate Bill 1512 has to do with licensing agencies. So agencies that license people for occupational licenses, how they can look at criminal histories. So it gives some clarification on the licensing agencies that have broad discretion to look at somebody's past and determine moral fitness, or what's the term that they use for always use moral turpitude, I think is what the term is. For all those licensing agencies that can look at somebody's past and take into account their criminal history, and from that criminal history determine such things as moral fitness. This bill says that they can only do that, they can only take into account somebody's past criminal history if that criminal history substantially relates to the job's duties and responsibilities. And the bill goes on further to give clarification about what that means. What does it mean to substantially relate to the job's duties and responsibilities? When I saw this bill pop up, I sent it immediately to Dr. Richardson and I said, do you think that we should submit testimony on this bill, because it is very much consistent with the strategic plan trying to reduce employment barriers for people with criminal histories? And he said yes. So actually, before anybody asks, we've actually already submitted testimony on this bill, and I will be happy to send that around to everybody after this meeting. The bill was supposed to be heard this morning in the Senate Judiciary Committee, and it got held over to tomorrow morning. So I wasn't able to hear if there's anybody who has any objection to it. I did look and see just who has submitted testimony, and there are a few people who've submitted testimony, and it's all in favor of this bill. So I have good hopes for it. I'll just stop right there and say, does anybody have any questions about Senate Bill 1512?
Yeah, I'm sorry if I missed you in the beginning. Would that apply to the state's own registering of or credentialing of workers?
So would explain that more to me, Tony?
Yeah, there's a commission called the THW Commission. It's embedded inside the Office of Equity and Inclusion in OHA, and they're responsible for credentialing traditional health workers. And they use a DHS background check to do that, and it disproportionately excludes people in recovery and minorities, and most specifically women with DHS cases. And I've been fighting them for a long time on changing that. And so I'm just wondering if it would apply to them.
So, Tony, does a traditional health worker get a license?
No, it's a certification.
No. It's like being credentialed.
Right.
You know,
Jill, does the bill relate to employment or does it relate to credentialing?
it specifically says to licensing board, commission, or agencies.
As I was thinking, traditional health worker commission.
So, and the bill only talks about occupational or professional licenses.
Okay, then that probably clarifies it enough.
Right. So I would say that no, traditional health worker doesn't fall under this bill. Sorry, I'm trying to read it fast. So Tony, I think it has to do specifically with licenses.
Could Tony speak with the originator to get it amended to add that other entity possibly?
Potentially, I'm gonna follow up on it. I'm also a board member at MACBO, which credentials non-licensed behavioral health workers. We have about 11,000 members, so I'm gonna review it from that end.
And Tony, Eric and Makbo would know this better than I do. For professions that are credentialized instead of licensed, perhaps it's a different statute that they fall under, and so it wouldn't come under this bill. But Makbo would know that better than I do. But good question. Thanks for bringing it up. Okay. All right. Our last bill, which is a last minute addition, is House Bill 4056. I put a link to the bill in chat in case anybody would like to look it up. House Bill 4056 makes some changes to Measure 110. And that's why I'm bringing it up so everybody knows that this bill exists. So the change that it makes is that, there was a distribution formula for marijuana tax revenue even before ballot measure 110, and there was a certain percentage that went to cities and a certain percentage that went to counties and a certain percentage that went to some other areas. And then any revenue over, I believe it was $11.25 million, was transferred over to ballot measure 110. House Bill 4056 makes a change to that, and the change is that the amount that goes to cities, counties, and other areas is adjusted annually for inflation, and then the remainder is transferred over to ballot measure 110. The bill has a hearing tomorrow afternoon in House Revenue. The legislator who sponsored this bill is Representative Nathanson, who is the chair of House Revenue. So when Dr. Richardson asked me about this bill and asked, my thoughts on it, I said, well, the person who sponsored it is the chair of the committee. So, I'd take that into my calculation for the progress this bill may make this session. I just wanted everybody to know of its existence, so you know that there may be some changes to how or the amount of money being transferred over to ballot measure 110. Are there any questions about House Bill 4056?
No, but I thought there was another bill. I thought there was two bills that would impact Measure 110.
There's another bill. For this week, I put on our list of bills to talk about bills that had hearings, because man, we're rolling fast. We're rolling fast during this short session. There's another bill. It's a Senate bill, and I can get you the bill number here in a second. The second bill that would impact ballot measure 110 monies has to do with it's Senator Knope's bill. Senator Knope would take $15 million and set that aside for the state police to assist counties with illegal marijuana grows and distribution. So it would decrease the amount going over to ballot measure 110 by $15 million. The last time I checked, which was yesterday, and things happen quickly, the last time I checked, that bill didn't have a hearing. So I didn't put it on this week's list of bills to talk about. But you're absolutely right, Tony. There are two bills that I know of so far that have been introduced this session that would change how much money is transferred over to ballot measure 110. All right. And with that, we have come to the end of our list of bills that have hearings this week. Judge Block, I was just going to call on you, so good timing.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about that OLCC bill, and I just wanted to ask a question about it. Mm-hmm. And we may all be speculating, but where are they coming from? What's the nature of their concern here? Is it, traditionally you want to restrict, there's a concern about oversupply is either from a, from a public health standpoint, gosh, there's too much marijuana out there, it's too available, more people are going to use it, or from an economic standpoint, there's too much marijuana, it's driving the prices down and it's making it diseconomic for the existing license holders. My suspicion, given that it's OLCC, it's the latter, not the former. But how are they characterizing this?
Yeah, so this is what they told me about House Bill 4016. And that is that there is an overproduction of marijuana right now. Mm-hmm. And that they are concerned there is still an illegal market for marijuana in Oregon, even though we have legalized it. And their concern is that if there are producers out there producing a lot of marijuana but have nowhere to sell it, that marijuana is going to end up in the black market, or what they call the gray market. And I don't have a great definition of gray market, but this is my best attempt at it. The gray market is that people are producing or selling products that aren't strictly prohibited by statute, but aren't what the statute intended. And it's this gray area.
Right.
So they said their concern is that overproduction of marijuana is going either to the black market or to this gray market area, and they don't want that to happen.
Okay. Which I guess is a little bit of public health and mostly economic, but okay. Well, I'm just was wondering about that.
And OLCC has told Dr. Richardson, I think that this is not surprising or shocking to anyone, the marijuana industry is still an evolving industry. And for OLCC, that means they are always playing catch up, that they have a statute, a rule, a regulation, and the industry kind of figures out how to do something kind of on the side, or something that the OLCC just never thought of. And so they're always trying to play catch up with them. And I think they'll be the first ones to admit that they feel like they're always a few steps behind wherever the market is going. Mm-hmm. And that may have contributed to what they're calling the gray market. But they said they have huge concerns that there has been an overabundance of marijuana and where that marijuana is going. Mm-hmm. So that's what I can tell you.
Thank you.
Yeah, may I have a comment? Jill,
yeah.
Kelly, hi everyone.
Yeah.
Just on that note, and I'm sure a lot of people have heard the stories, but Southern Oregon in particular has just been completely overrun. And the expense involved, I heard Judge Block say, the economic piece. The expense for counties is getting overwhelming between the, physical destroying that we have to do at the landfill, to the law enforcement, to the, sending a helicopter up. Not that we have money to do that, but it just has, we had to meet about it. Our board met about it the other day because it's going to add something like a $400,000 worth of expense that we were never anticipating, which maybe doesn't sound like that big in the big cities, but that's huge in a rural county. So the expense to sort of the system has gotten really, really big, at least in my experience.
Yeah. Thanks, Kelly.
And I think OLCC would say when we were first setting up our marijuana laws in Oregon that they hadn't envisioned a time when there would be this overproduction and problems from overproduction. And so they didn't ask for the ability to say no to licenses because of overproduction. And so that this is yet one more instance of they're always trying to do catch up, and they didn't think about this back when we were starting our marijuana program.
Yeah, it at least conceptually, it makes sense that everybody's sort of wants to make $1 million opening up a marijuana store, And so then there's all these people on the production side thinking, well, hell, there's like marijuana stores, on every block. So there must need a lot of marijuana. So let's grow a lot. And, and then it drives prices down. It just creates an oversupply as they're concerned about, may feed into the black or gray market, which they're also trying to eliminate. So I understand how this bill could, at least in concept, help them, work on some of those issues. We're not contemplating taking a position on it, but I think it's an interesting bill to keep track of, and it'll be interesting to see if they're given the authority, how they implement it, right? How do they decide who to say no to, right?
Right, exactly. And you're exactly right, Judge Block. So when I sent my bill list to Dr. Richardson on this one, the note I attached to it was I'm planning on tracking it, but not doing anything more. So you're absolutely right. I'm tracking it. I wasn't planning for us to do anything on it other than just to monitor its progress.
Yeah.
And then if it does pass, you're absolutely right. That is a great question for us to be monitoring over at OLCC, is then how do they determine who to say no to?
Right.
All right, with that, we have made it through our list of bills for this week. And Judge Block, the next item on our agenda was a question to you, and that is, our next scheduled meeting is for March, for the first Wednesday in March, knowing that that will be toward the end of the short session. Would you like us to wait until then to do a wrap up of short session, or would you like us to meet sometime during the short session?
Deep in contemplation. I think he's frozen. But I'll hop in. If y'all have the bandwidth, I think it would be cool if we could meet at least one more time in the middle of the session and get a download.
Okay.
Yeah, I think.
Okay, so I heard from two saying yes. So let me put an extra meeting on the calendar about halfway through session. Okay, I can do that. All right. With that, that comes to our end of our agenda for today. Oh, Judge Block's gonna come back into our meeting for the last 2 seconds of it. All right. So Judge Block, we decided in your absence that we're gonna meet one more time about midway through session.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
Hey, do we have any members of the public on?
Mm-mm.
No. Okay. So can I, since this is kind of a little bit of our brain trust here, I exclude myself, of course, from that. But
It's recording, Judge Block.
Well, that's okay. That's okay.
Okay.
Judge,
I can stop recording if you'd like
Dr.
to.
Richardson, you want to
Adjourn.
say something? You wanted to warn me off?
You're on mute, Dr. R.
Thank you. With your permission, what I'd like to do is for you to adjourn the meeting, turn off the recorder, and then we can
Good plan.
we can just kick around whatever you want.
Let's just kick around. We don't have a quorum or anything close to
I'm
it.
going to stop recording then.
Good idea.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Richardson, you're becoming a